We're back with the Fapstinence podcast, trying to bring you freedom from porn. I'm here with Kevin Ray Wilder, rather, and I'm your co-host, Peter Kirsting. And last couple episodes, we were talking about really just is porn a problem? We threw some stats at you. We talked about the scientific evidence of what it's doing to your brain in regards to dopamine, gray matter, all that kind of good stuff, as well as what is it doing to your relationships? Now, in this episode, we're really going to be diving into okay, I buy it. It's a problem, but I'm not addicted. How do I know if I'm addicted? Right? And that's the next step for us on the podcast, I think, is how do people know how to tell if they're addicted and what to do about it, Kevin?
So simply put, can you stop? And I know a lot of people maybe listening to this right now don't think they have a problem, can just think, oh, well, I can stop at any point. It's a similar thing to, with my background in fitness when I tell people, hey, well, can you stop eating these unhealthy foods, or can you actually just start going to the gym at a certain time? Yeah, I could do that. It's easy. On the surface, it sounds very, very easy and simple to do. But then when you actually try it, it's a whole different story. So first, you cannot say, especially if you watch pornography regularly, and when I say regularly, at least even just once a week, because it's so stimulating that it can have an effect on your brain if you're even just watching it a few times a month. So can you actually just stop? Have you ever tried to consciously stop? Not like you were just really busy at a certain point of your life, and because of that, you just forgot to watch porn. That's fine that you're busy in your life, and that's cool and all, and that's good. But have you ever consciously tried to abstain from it? And if the answer to that is no, then you cannot truly know whether you're addicted or not.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, I think, as well, especially the part where you said when you're busy, right? Because it's really easy to not do anything that's bad for you when you're busy all the time, when you're always around people. But what about the lulls of your day? When you're home alone, you're stressed out, you're tired, you're whatever. The other aspect of this, not on just like how have you ever tried to stop, but think about your consumption if you are someone who watches porn. How frequently do you watch it? And have you noticed any tendencies about how you're feeling when you decide to watch? A lot of times it ends up being an impulsive thing, but also you'll end up noticing, I think, if you start to chart how you're feeling emotionally in these situations, that you're going to see some patterns. And that's true for addiction, at least, is that it becomes a coping mechanism for something in your life. So maybe you have a stressful day at work. Your boss yelled at you, didn't pay you on time. You come home, and that's when you notice, hey, I had a crappy day at work, so I'm going to vap. That can be a pattern. Oh, I can't sleep well. I had a person tell me this once. I started watching porn because I can't sleep well, and it was something I did to help me deal with that. So if you notice that your consumption is tied with a particular emotion, whether it be a loneliness, being tired, being hungry, being stressed, or something else, I think that's an indicator, at least, that it could be something that's addictive for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you're tying it to a certain thing to get a certain outcome. So for most people, it's to, this helps me sleep. This helps me de-stress. This helps me unwind, right? When you have a certain attachment to that, it actually makes it that much more harder to quit. And actually, it's a good indication of whether you're actually addicted to it or not. So again, I'm going to tie it back to fitness because that's my biggest expertise. When people typically eat unhealthy foods or binge eat from as an emotional response to something that happens in their life. So for example, like you were just saying, my boss is really pissing me off, or I'm really stressed out from work. I'm just going to emotionally eat, or I'm really sad. I'm just going to emotionally eat to feel better. right? Your brain makes that connection and says, "Oh, well, the source for me to feel better is this thing," and it creates this unfortunate positive feedback loop where it's like every single time your brain makes the connection, every single time I feel sad, or for every single time I feel sad, I eat food, or more specifically for what we're talking about, every single time I feel stressed out, every single time I'm wide awake and I need to fall asleep, I need to watch porn, right? And because of that, you become more and more dependent because you rely on certain states that you need to get into throughout the day, throughout your daily life. The pornography becomes the bedrock with which, or I'm sorry, the foundation, I should say, with which, you know, you form that habit, right? So because of that, it actually makes it even more addicting because in order for you to get to these states that you need to get into on a daily basis, porn is a requirement. And because porn is already just addicting on its own, you also become reliant on it throughout your daily life, right? That was a personal thing that happened for me. And in all honesty, I still struggle with sometimes. It's like I'll just be wide awake. And before, because for 10 years, I literally just said, oh, well, if I go, when you want to go to sleep, I need to watch porn first. I need to have my release and then I'll go to sleep. So even now, I still struggle. Like I'll just be awake longer than I need to kick this, right? Because I'm trying to deprogram the feedback loop that I've allowed myself to get into for the past 10 years. And if you have certain things like that where you notice in certain states or certain times a day, right, that you always watch porn, or whenever you do watch porn, if you notice that there's regular times or regular occurrences with which triggers that, then that's going to give you a better idea of really actually are you addicted and how much harder it is going to be for you to stop.
Yeah. And I think there's all these signs that say, man, this could be a problem more than you're willing to admit. And I think one of the reasons why porn addiction actually is a more pervasive thing than people realize is because it's not something that you think of as a traditional addictive property. And that's one of the reasons why we started this podcast by talking about the sheer number of people who watch porn on a daily basis and the amount of content that's out there, because it's clearly something that is consumed on a regular basis and in large quantities. And so that's an easy one for me to see. If you watch porn once a week, twice a week, daily, you're watching an unhealthy amount. If you're watching porn at times when you're dealing with particular feelings or trying to cope with something and it has become your coping mechanism, that's a clear sign to me that that's an addictive tendency. And that's one of the interesting things we could talk about later on when it comes to recovery. If you've come to the conclusion that you are dealing with addiction and it's something that you want to recover from, is that there's a lot of studies out there that are starting to show that addiction has a lot to do with your personality, even more so than the actual subject matter itself, whether it be alcohol or porn or drugs or anything else. Your personality and the way that you deal with things can lead you into addictive habits much more easily, depending on who you are. So, knowing yourself, know thyself, that is number one, right? And that's where you need to take a deep, hard look at yourself and say, all right, I'm not sure if Kevin and Peter are on the level here, but I'm going to at least try to stop. Now ask yourself, were you successful? For how long? And how hard was it? Because if it's not addictive, it should be easy, right? If you're not addicted to alcohol, you shouldn't be thinking about alcohol all day, even if you made it throughout the day without drinking alcohol, right? You just stop. It's not a problem. An alcoholic cannot drink for a whole day. That doesn't mean that they're not an alcoholic. You can make it a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks without watching porn. That doesn't mean that you're not addicted to porn, especially if every time you close your eyes, you're imagining things, right? So it takes a level of honesty, humility, I'd say, with yourself. But I think one thing that I'd like to say, just kind of in closing, is if you do feel like this is something that's weighing on you, or maybe this is an epiphany that it could be something that's weighing on you, to really try to be honest about it. And if you're noticing that there are some things here, I think one of the first steps, if you're going to try to kick an addiction, especially an addiction to pornography, is to straight up talk to somebody about it and tell them that it's something you're having a problem with. Because when you're addicted to something, there's often shame attached to that. And when you have shame, you hide things. And when you hide things, they fester and they grow, right? Like a fungus or something. You need to expose it to light. You need to tell people, shout from the top of your rooftops, I watch too much porn. And then deal with it.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. I mean, accountability is key, and you don't have to fight this fight alone. You don't have to, because watching porn and getting over any kind of addiction, it's an internal battle, sure, but especially if there's a lot of other people going through that same internal struggle, you can congregate in tribes. Humans naturally congregate in tribes, so find your tribe of guys who are going through the same struggle. That's something we're trying to create with this podcast itself as well. And it's really important to do that. And also, I think people just in general inherently know that being addicted to anything is bad. And we all know, because we're all human beings, we know the power of sex because we experience it. And we understand that having an addiction to porn is something that's really hard to get over. It's really difficult.
It's emasculating. It's
Yeah.
decreases your confidence. And one of the things I think we really are trying to do here, Kevin, is destigmatize the idea that if you talk about this stuff in a way that you're not glorifying it, that you're saying, hey, this is something that might be really bad for me, you're not going to be judged for that. Or if you are, that dude or whoever they are needs to get the heck away, because that's ridiculous. Okay.
Absolutely.
You are able to talk about this stuff openly, it's gonna help. And there's no reason in today's age that we shouldn't be able to talk about this stuff openly. You shouldn't feel ashamed to talk about this with people. And I think that's an important aspect we need to get across, especially if you feel like you're having issues. Is it's gonna be hard to tell people, but it gets easier with time, and it's going to make you take some ownership of this thing in a way that's not going to, honestly, we talk about freedom from porn because I really think it's like a slavery. It's something that's chaining you down. You don't even realize the chains are right there on your ankles, but the moment that you can kind of like see them for what they are, you can start breaking those shackles, man.
Yep. And it's so interesting. Just a little anecdote here. For me personally, I've had zero people say anything bad about my journey and my attempts to try to quit porn. Zero. Even from I know someone personally who she does like OnlyFans and those types of things. So she's technically kind of a sex worker. I mean, we're not really good friends or anything. But even her, she's just like, wow, props. Because even someone that works within kind of that industry, not the hardcore stuff. I mean, of course, you could still, just because someone, it's about looking at people as humans, right? Just because she does something that I kind of disagree with, I'm still going to look at her as a human being. So even her, she's just like, wow, props, because she knows that with working in that industry, kind of, she knows that people have a problem with it. So even people who gain to benefit have to have this normalized, even them still see respect or still respect people trying to get rid of the addiction. So you don't need to feel shame for this. We all know there's two types of people in this world. There's two types of men: guys who have problems, watch porn and have an issue with it, and guys who don't admit it. I fully believe in that. For millennial men specifically, it's very, very rare. It says a lot that when I talk to someone, we already just assume we both watch porn, right? It's very interesting, and it says a lot that it's actually weird and
It's weirder to say that you're not
it's
watching
weirder
porn.
to say that you're not watching. It's like, wow, yeah. Because whenever I talk to people about what I'm trying to do, or when I tell people, my friend Peter has like gone through like an entire year of nofap, for example, they're like, whoa, that's amazing, which it is. But it's interesting how that is more out of the ordinary than watching porn and releasing to it multiple times a day or multiple times a week. That's the norm. Right.
People can somehow relate to that more than not doing it for a year.
Says a lot, man. But that's why what we're doing here, I think, is going to be really important.
I'm excited to talk about it more as we go, but there's so many elements of this. One thing I'll say is, because last episode I talked about two negatives, right? The idea of lack of accountability and objectification. But I think one really, really positive, if we can get this across to people, is just huge, is no judgment, right? When it comes to this stuff. Also, the idea that delayed gratification is a good thing. It's not something they're going to tell you out in society. In fact, most people are going to choose the route of instant gratification, but anybody who's successful in life can tell you the more you can delay gratification, the more success, the more you're going to be able to achieve. And it's definitely true for this kind of stuff, in my opinion. We're not trying to say to you, don't have a libido. I think the people who are dealing with the most are people who have a strong libido, and that's not a bad thing. It's about being able to control and harness your energy in a positive way so you can be confident and you can pursue the things that are healthy for you and for other people, and hopefully eventually for society as a whole. And I'm just excited to be able to share that with people, the positive aspects of this. Today, we've been talking about just how do you know if you're addicted and what are some of the first steps to deal with it. Be honest, be open, talk about it with people, and you're not going to receive judgment for it. And if you think you have a problem, continue listening to the podcast, because we're going to be really trying to dive into all the aspects of this, factually, emotionally, psychologically, all of it. This whole last week, we've been talking about, is porn even really a problem to begin with? We threw some numbers at you. The sheer number of people who watch this stuff, the people who put the stuff out there into the wide world, and there's a lot of it. We talked about the science, what it does to your brain. We also talked about who it's affecting, you, me, and the rest of society. And we've kind of been trying to talk about the positive aspects of it here. Once I've admitted that I'm addicted, what's the next step moving forward, Kevin?
Once you know that you're addicted, you should just start taking action. You know, listen to our podcast, but then also just reach out to people. Make sure that you have accountability structures, all those types of things, and yeah, mostly just come back to this podcast. We're gonna give you
There are
more of a step
resources
by step
out
process
there.
of what to do.
There
Yep.
are resources out there. We'd love to share them with you. And I hope you tune back in. Peter Kirsting, Kevin Ray Wilder, and this is the Fapstinence podcast. We want you to find freedom from porn. So don't forget to tune in next episode.
Peace out.